Hello everybody, Cosmic Zen here. I want to talk a little bit about America's dirty little secret. Now it starts with the assassination of Osama bin Laden, though this won't be all about that. It kind of is a good starting place. I don't celebrate the death of a human, even if, they're the bad guy, even if he's guilty. And not just bin Laden, but killers, rapists, child molesters. What they did was bad, sure, but I don't celebrate when people die. That's just immoral to me. I mean, they're human beings. And so many people that I've talked to feel that justice was done with Osama being killed. But death is no punishment. Everybody dies eventually. Life imprisonment and then dying. Now that's punishment. And the people who would advocate the death penalty seems to think that it would be cheaper, but it's not. It costs more to kill somebody than it does to put them in prison for life, and anyone can go look it up. It's easy to find, Google search it, all the facts back it up. And the truth is that it's not even justice anyway. How does killing Osama bin Laden justify the death of just the 3,000 people in the World Trade Center? How does his one death equal 3,000 deaths? That's not justice. You're still 2,999 deaths behind. And you can still apply this to murderers, rapists, and child molesters. When you kill the child molester or you kill the rapist, does that unmolest the child or unrape the raped? So many people believe that his death was justice. It's just bizarre to me. He didn't pay for his crimes at all. He did what he wanted until he died and suffered no consequence, except death, which, is bad, but like I said, we all die. He suffered no consequence. And Christians that I've talked to, oh my God, there's no turning the other cheek at all. It's all an eye for an eye. Well, if you believe that this was justice, or in the eye for an eye mentality, and you equate that with Osama bin Laden and the 3,000 people who died in the World Trade Center, well, what about the 1.5 million people Bush killed in those wars? If you look at it in that sense, we owe them a lot of lives. What, are you going to take 1.5 million, subtract 3,000 from it, and then offer up that many Americans to go be slaughtered to have justice? Or do you just believe justice for us and not them? And also, I feel like nothing was really accomplished in killing Osama bin Laden. Now someone has taken his place and we don't know who they are. Now we're on high alert again. Literally, we were almost safer before he got killed. So I don't understand why all these people are cheering in the streets. What a mob mentality. And what's really the kicker is that this didn't start with the 9/11 bombing. It's not like bin Laden or whoever plotted those terrorist acts. It's not like they just one day planned 9/11 and did it. They had reasons that they did that. And I remember when people were trying to come up with the reasons why they would have done this, hearing people say, oh, it's because our way of life. They're jealous of our way of life. They're not jealous of our way of life. They don't care if America's using drugs and watching pornography and having strip clubs and all that other stuff. They don't care about none of that stuff. When they say that they don't like our way of life, it's not that they're talking about. It's not the lifestyles. It's the capitalist system and the way the capitalist system is oppressing their world. You can go back all the way to when Columbus came to the Americas, and it started about then. I guess it probably started before then, but in the southern hemisphere, the poverty that's inflicted by the northern hemisphere's capitalism started there. They came over here, they started oppressing these cultures, the English, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Portuguese. They divided up South America and Africa, parts of Asia and North America. They came over here, they made laws to where if the local tribe governments didn't actually claim authority upon the land, that they could claim the land, and this is what began the colonization. They didn't recognize the authority of the native cultures that lived in all these different areas, And a lot of these native cultures, they didn't own the land like the Westerners owned the land. They were part of the land. It was just like the animals and the trees and the idea of the Great Spirit of whatever gods that they believed in. They were all part of the system. So the Europeans came, claimed the land, and they set up this capitalist system. Now in a capitalist system, you must exploit the resources. You have to have free or nearly free labor and material goods to sell that you can make a profit from. So what they would do is they would go to these places. Let's take Bolivia as an example. Bolivia is kind of known for its sugar, and like Colombia is known for its coffee. Well, for 100,000 years or whatever, these cultures survived in all these different places just fine. They had skilled craftsmen that would come up with the tools and things that they needed to exist. They would have their meats and their vegetables and their fruits. They were functioning fine. Then the Westerners would come in and they would make certain aspects of life illegal and make them focus on one thing, like in Colombia raising the coffee. Now you don't have these tribes raising their herd animals, raising their fruits, doing anything else except focusing on raising the coffee. Or in Bolivia, making the sugar. Then they would take the raw materials of the sugar and say they would harvest about $1 million worth of sugar, send it to America to be refined and then brought back and sold for $1 billion. And because they were getting paid slave wages working all day long every day for literally almost nothing, and they couldn't afford the refined goods when they came back, this is how the Western world has impoverished the Southern Hemisphere. It's like this in South America. It's like this in Africa. They make them dependent on buying the different products from the different places at a higher price than the things they were doing themselves for nearly free for 100,000 years. Well, besides the raw materials of, say, coffee and sugar, it's like this with gold and silver. And then once the gold and silver is all running out, it became oil. And that's what the problem is in the Middle East, was these oil people are crushing these people, making them work and live in poverty, while America and Europe is exploiting them for this oil. And this is why they got pissed off and attack us. They don't have the armies or the military complexes we do. They do what they can, which is terrorist attacks. Now this is a simplification of what's going on there. I could get into more detail about many more aspects of what's causing this poverty in the Southern Hemisphere. It's not just the capitalism, it's the military complex, it's the missionaries who go there and destroy cultures. They wipe out all their cultures and songs and praises of their own gods and replace it with the Christian God. And they've destroyed so many cultures this way that these people, when they grow up without their culture, are forced to accept our culture and our way of life, or at least the way of life we're imposing on them, and growing up and living their lives in slavery and poverty. And it is slavery. When you go out and you're working 12 hours a day for $1, that's freaking slavery. And 60% of the world is existing on $1 a day or less. And another thing I'd like to address about the whole Osama bin Laden assassination incident, when you saw all these people cheering, I mean, besides the fact that they're cheering for the death of a human, I mean, it took them 10 years to get the guy. Is that really a giant success rate? Was that really such a great victory? You know, if they would have killed him in the first week or the first month or even the first year, maybe there'd be a reason for cheering, but 10 years later? Come on. Now, when 9/11 happened, I was working at a convenience store back then, at an Exxon convenience store gas station, and not to be stereotypical, it was kind of the reality. I worked with a lot of Arabic people. People from a bunch of different Arabic countries, okay? It's not just like one group of people. You know, there was people from Yemen and Arabia and Tunisia and several other countries. Iraq, Iran. There was a Pakistani and an Afghani. I mean, they were from all over the place. And when 9/11 happened, not all of them, but most of them, they were happy. They understood. They were cheering. And I was appalled. I mean, I was like sickened. Like, how can you sit here and be celebrating the death and destruction of 9/11? It was just totally beyond me, and it kind of woke me up to trying to understand these other people's points of view, because it was so bizarre to me that they could be relishing in such devastation. But when I saw Americans cheering in the streets on TV over and over in all these different cities, and the discussions I've had with people who are just celebrating this entire idea, I see that they're no different. They're no different. The Americans, people, will celebrate the death of somebody else as long as, we got them this time. So the Arabic people that I saw cheering at 9/11 were no different than the Americans cheering when we got Osama bin Laden. There was no difference. They're human beings cheering at the death of somebody else. And like I said, 9/11 isn't what started this. This has been going on for centuries. So it's not like there was justice done. If anything, we owe them a lot more deaths still. And if you're disagreeing with what I'm saying, that's cool. I understand this is an unpopular opinion. But maybe you should ask yourself, are you really concerned about justice? Are you really concerned about trying to make things right? Or are you just continuing the cycle of violence? Because that's what's going on here. It's a continual cycle of violence. We screwed them over and killed some of them. They screwed us over and killed some of us. We go over there with an army and kill a lot of them. And we expect peace? I mean, do they really think that our army is going to wipe out everybody who hates America? They need to fix the problems, which is keeping these people in poverty and enslaving them to a system they don't even want or need. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not an Osama sympathizer. Maybe he was guilty. But he should have been brought to trial. This is another thing that many people don't seem to understand, that as an American citizen, we have certain rights, that we're supposed to get speedy trials, even though the Patriot Act kind of screws with those whole rights quite a bit. And they'll say, well, Osama bin Laden wasn't a citizen. That's fine, but he did crimes against America, and he should be brought to trial. So when they say, well, his rights weren't violated because he has no rights because he's not a citizen, that's fine. But I am an American citizen, and it's my right to hold the criminals on trial. So by assassinating Osama bin Laden, they took my rights away to see justice done, if justice was to be done. Really, the only evidence we have that Osama bin Laden had any part in 9/11 is because he said so. Because he admitted it, because he wanted to get power for Al-Qaeda or whatever. But let's see the facts. Let's see the paper trail. Let's see who he knew. The real truth is that they killed him because he could have talked. He could have probably implicated Bush and Cheney and all those other guys. For some of you people who are my age or older, maybe you remember the whole Iran-Contra affair. He might have implicated Bush Sr. I mean, he would have implicated some people. And that's another reason why he should have been brought to trial to see justice done, because he wasn't the sole operator. There were people backing him up. And those other people are walking around, a lot of them in Texas right now, living it up on your gas money. Is justice really done? Or does more justice need to be dealt out? Is there even really justice at all? Because that's what I think. I don't think there could ever be justice. There is no way to rectify or restore a life once it's taken. So let me know what you think. Peace.